Hello, everyone. I'm Stan Markov. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Runecast. And here we're going to be talking about Runecast, the company, and also the product Runecast Analyzer. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about the history of Runecast. As I mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders and also VCDX number 74. Together with my co-founders, we used to work for IBM for many, many years prior to starting with Runecast. And we started working with VMware technologies at the time when VMware was used basically for test and development purposes. So over time, everybody started virtualizing even their most critical workloads. And this really enabled us to create a big VMware Center of Excellence team in IBM that was managing most of the IBM customers running VMware across the EMEA region. And it helped us also work on very interesting projects. We were defining best practices from VMware for the entire IBM, security technical specifications. Basically, we were living and breathing VMware for many, many years. We also had to firefight a lot of issues along the way. Even though we were using various tools to try to diagnose problems, to try to maybe prevent them, we were always surprised by some purple screen of death or some other serious issue that was causing either some outage or some security incompliance or some performance problem. So when we did analysis on thousands of problem tickets, we wanted to find some patterns, maybe that would help us to reduce those incidents from happening in future. So this is when we realized that in over 90% of the cases, the root cause of the particular issue that we had to solve that caused an outage or another serious problem was a known issue, bug, or best practice violation that was documented somewhere online, either in the VMware knowledge base or some online forums, security hardening guides, hardware compatibility list. Basically, there's tons of useful information that's online, but it's human readable and unstructured. And people were only using it reactively. Only when a problem happens, you usually spend sometimes days, nights, or weeks of troubleshooting and trying to find the root cause. And in most of those cases, you end up reading either a knowledge base article or some other source of online information. That's when we thought there must be a better way of doing this. If we find a way to harness that human readable unstructured data, turn it into machine readable rules, that could allow us to proactively analyze the configuration and logs of the VMware systems of our customers and discover those potential risks before they strike, before they cause some major outage or some security incompliance. So this is what we thought that we should do. And the main reason for that is that we were really experiencing service outages all the time. We were spending a lot of time in troubleshooting. We had to continuously keep up with all the best practices, known issues, new versions that were published out there. And another problem that we decided to solve is also the security compliance posture and the way that it can be achieved. We had to do security health checks on each one of our customers on a regular basis, which took really a long time to do manually. Anytime we had a security audit, there were always some gaps discovered. There were sometimes penalties, lots of reports and mitigations that had to be done. So we thought that we could find a way to solve that problem as well. So back in 2014, we all quit IBM. We started Runecast, and a year later, we launched Runecast Analyzer version 1.0 at VMworld in San Francisco in 2015. So at that time, Runecast Analyzer was solving these problems in VMware operations that I mentioned. It's a proactive VMware management software that uses our expertise and the VMware knowledge base and other knowledge sources to proactively analyze your virtual infrastructure and to expose potential issues before they cause major outages. Actually, Steve, we were presenting 2 years ago at TechField Day Extra at VMworld. And at that time, there's one thing I remember after our presentations. What Steve said is, wouldn't it be great to have Runecast for everything? And we've heard that before, because wouldn't it be great to leverage all that human readable unstructured knowledge for any system or anything that you're using, any technology, and discover the problems before they happen? That would be amazing. And we were actually already in that direction. We built Runecast Analyzer with the mindset that we are starting with VMware, but we can apply the same concept to any technology out there. So the same unique end-to-end know-how that we have to harness the human readable unstructured knowledge, turn it into machine readable rules, and proactively discover risks before they cause some problems. That can be applied to any technology out there. So when we're thinking of what other technologies we can look into, and what admins or IT operations teams have to handle these days. We looked at the cloud adoption, right? Many enterprises started slowly but surely adopt public clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP, but AWS came out as something that our customers wanted the most. Also, lately, we hear more and more about Kubernetes and containers in general. Whether people want it or not, this is something that's been adopted more and more on enterprise level. Even though previously containers were used by some silo development teams, right now containers are, or open source Kubernetes is starting to be included in the enterprise architecture strategy of many big organizations. But there's, of course, some challenges coming with that, with both the adoption of Kubernetes and AWS. One of the things is the complexity of operating Kubernetes and AWS. There's a little bit different world than what we're used to in VMware and Windows and Linux. And we have to learn that there is obviously skills gap in technical teams. Everybody's getting trained, educated on Kubernetes, on AWS, but it's really hard to be an expert in everything. And not only that, but you have evolving best practices, known issues, and security recommendations for all of these technologies. It's really humanly impossible to keep track of everything. Also, especially when adopting Kubernetes or AWS public cloud, security compliance and security hardening is a big concern. And there could be potentially a lot of manual efforts going into making sure that you're security compliant. Some of the biggest breaches that we've heard of in the last couple of years that came from AWS environments were because, for example, some S3 buckets were by mistake exposed to the public or not encrypted and so on. Or basically any security compliance mistake that you make in your AWS and maybe your Kubernetes could cost you a lot. And obviously you need something to make sure that you can reduce that complexity, something that would be on top of best practices, latest information about security recommendations, and also something that will help you automate all these efforts and automate your security compliance, auditing and reporting. But ideally, you would not want to have different tools for each one of these platforms. It will be best if you have one platform to cover your hybrid cloud. And this is what Runecast Analyzer is, especially with the release that we had last week on the 30th of September. Runecast Analyzer 4.5 is a proactive hybrid cloud management solution that uses AI-assisted knowledge parsing and our now patented rules engine to expose potential issues before they cause major outages or security incompliances. What Runecast Analyzer covers now is far beyond what we covered 2 years ago when we were last here at the Tech Field Day Extra. Not only do we cover the VMware knowledge base, best practices, also social media, because some known issues are first published by some influencers sometimes before they're recognized by the vendor, published as a blog article. So we make sure to vet those as well and add them to our set of rules before they're even recognized by the vendor. But also we've added automated analysis against the VMware hardware compatibility list, also against AWS, Kubernetes, documentation, best practices, and various different security compliance standards. Currently, we cover NIST, DISA-STIG, PCI DSS, HIPAA, BSI, IT Grundschutz, which is a very important German standard, CIS, and also GDPR for AWS and soon also for the other platforms. In terms of technologies that Runecast Analyzer is covering, we cover the main components of the VMware software-defined data center. So we cover vSphere, vSAN, NSX, and Horizon. And since last year, we added support for AWS public cloud. So from the same Runecast Analyzer, you can connect to your on-prem VMware and also to your AWS accounts. And we're also certified for VMware Cloud on AWS. So if you have that flavor of infrastructure as well, you can plug in your Runecast Analyzer to it for analysis. And since last week, we added support also for open source Kubernetes. So now from one dashboard, you can see your risk and security compliance posture across your entire hybrid cloud.
I'm interested in, especially talking about the social media data that you ingest, as well as some of the VMware official data. Some of that content lags. you'll get a corporate official answer way after you get some of the social media answers. And sometimes the social media answers aren't necessarily completely correct. So I'm really curious of how the vetting works, or if you're going to get into this later, that's a fine answer too. But like, how are you sure that the information you're getting is the information that should be codified and spread and informing people's decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a valid concern, right? And actually, even in the VMware knowledge base, if we zoom into that, there are knowledge base articles that are sometimes conflicting. Also, there could be discrepancies between what you could see in forums and social media in the knowledge base. So it's not as often, but whenever that happens, we always spend time. So we have a team of great experts, great engineers that are actually spending time and testing everything and making sure that whatever we're actually putting into our rules engine, into our rules database, is valid. And it's really based on something that we have tested. So we make sure to spend time on that and to really vet that potentially conflicting information. We don't just leave it to any automated mechanism to do that.
So that raises a question for me. Because you've mentioned that it's AI-assisted knowledge parsing. Lots of people at the moment are claiming that AI does all sorts of magic for them. What do you mean when you say it's AI-assisted knowledge parsing?
That's a great segue to the next slide, actually, because here I'm presenting the architecture and happy to answer this question. So the AI part, it consists of several different natural language processing modules. So we're using NLP and natural language understanding, which is in our internal platform. So Runecast Analyzer is software which is packaged in a virtual appliance. It's just a 1 gig OVA that customers can download and they can import in their infrastructure and connect it to their vCenters or AWS accounts. It contains all the rules engine, all the user interface, and the API. And this is what customers get. This is what we ship to customers. We do have also internal platform that we also built from scratch, which we called RICA, or Runecast AI Knowledge Automation. And this is a platform which is plugging into all of these sources of knowledge and monitoring if there's anything new or anything updated. Then for some sources of knowledge that are a little bit more structured, like the hardware compatibility list, we have fully automated way how to transition that into machine readable rules. For other sources of knowledge that are a bit more unstructured, we have this semi-automated way where the NLP modules are highlighting some specific phrases, for example, from a knowledge base article that has to be used in order to create the machine readable rule. So if you have a knowledge base article that's telling you if you have ESXi 6.5 and virtual machines running on it with CBT enabled, then your backups might fail or your host might crash with purple screen of death. So the NLP modules, that's where the AI comes in, is highlighting and suggesting what needs to be used to create these machine readable rules. And then we have an expert in the specific field, in this case VMware, which is validating the suggested rule or creating the rule based on the highlights. So this is where the AI comes in. Once the rules are created, they're very deterministic. So we have a very different approach to AI compared to other companies out there which are collecting all sorts of metrics from the environment and have some fuzzy methods to maybe predict what would happen. If we put a rule into our database, this means that many other people out there have experienced this problem based on this combination of configuration settings and objects. So it is pretty much with a very high likelihood that this might happen to you, so you have to mitigate. So as mentioned, the AI part is in the platform that is used for crawling all the sources of knowledge, and the patented rules engine that we have is within Runecast Analyzer itself. So Runecast Analyzer lives usually within the customer data center. There's no data which is uploaded outside of your environment, so it can work in dark sites. We have customers that are also in the defense sector, military, financial institutions that are really concerned with security. So we make sure that Runecast Analyzer can work in air-gapped sites and nothing is uploaded outside the organization. Even if you're connecting to AWS, the important thing to mention is Runecast can run in your on-prem environment. and you don't have to upload your data to any third party. Runecast Analyzer also gets updates on a weekly basis, every Tuesday normally, and it's really recommended to update your appliance regularly. You can configure it to update automatically on a weekly basis, and if you connect it to our online central repository via a secure proxy. But you have an offline update option as well, where an admin can download an ISO file, attach it to the Runecast Analyzer virtual machine, and perform the update this way. It's really quick time to value because it's 1 gig OVA. You just deploy it, set up the IP address, connect it to your vCenters, NSX managers, Horizon connection servers, AWS accounts, or Kubernetes clusters, and you get all the information in one single place. All the proactive detections of known issues, automated security compliance, auditing, and reporting. Upgrade HCL simulation. So this is really important because it solves a very big problem for VMware admins. With the HCL analysis, you can see if you're incompatible somewhere in your environment. For example, if you have an incompatible driver and firmware combination, that could cause a serious problem. But you can also simulate upgrades, and you can see whether everything will be green if you decide to upgrade to another vSphere version. And in terms of scalability, Runecast Analyzer can cover thousands of ESXi hosts, vCenters. Our biggest customer has 13,000 ESXi hosts, and they're using one single Runecast Analyzer to manage their entire environment. But there is a scale-out option as well. You can enable an enterprise console dashboard if you have multiple Runecast Analyzer instances. And in that dashboard, you can collect information from all the Runecast Analyzer instances that you have and manage them from one single place, which is ideal for MSPs or with environments that have multiple remote sites.
I have a question on this one, actually. Are there any high availability configurations, like if it's a single site, but you still have high availability, even if it's monitoring thousands at the same time?
In such cases, we pretty much rely on, you would be running it as a virtual machine, so we could rely on the vSphere HA. And since it's still not considered the most critical component of your infrastructure, usually that's not something our customers require.
So obviously coming from a point of view that, yes, you can do HA, but if it goes corrupt, for example, will you have to do it the entire thing again, or is there a configuration saved somewhere that you can deploy a new appliance?
You can back up the configuration if you need, or you could just deploy a new appliance. And if there's nothing that you wanted to keep from the previous one, then you could just start using the new appliance.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So our customers really are happy that they could save time and money from troubleshooting, upgrade planning, health checking, or hiring external resources. They're able to achieve higher level of availability because they can detect issues before they happen. And last but not least, they can automate their security compliance across the hybrid cloud, auditing, reporting, and also remediation through our vRealize Orchestrator plugin. So I would encourage you to visit runecast.com. We have a 14-day trial, and also reach us at innovate@runecast.com or follow me at this Twitter handle here. Thank you very much.